I think that in that situation, you definitely have a very strong role for independent voices who are not tethered to the political system.
Why do you think in a society which is evolving all the time and so much dynamic, and when people are, whether they're scientists, economists, doctors, lawyers, when they're fact-finding, we don't need a social proof. We don't need a social license to find facts. So, because if the majority of the country decides that is right or that is wrong, that is democratic from a point of view of political ideology or understanding to run a democracy or a functioning democracy. But from a fact-finding point of view, getting a social proof of doing a research, doing a fact-finding, how is that, either that is defunct or not relevant, or how do you see that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the modern day democracies, including Australia's, have weakened over time. I think the voice of the people in actually directing the machinery of state is much weaker today than it was, for example, the founding of Australia or the founding of the United States, my country of birth. And so when you talk about the democratic voice or the voice of the people, I think actually a lot of the decisions currently made by people in authority are not reflective of what is best for the people or what the people have voiced that they want. It's much more what an elite that have gained power and have more power than elites in the recent past have decided is good for them and their mates and for their own careers and for their own preservation of their status and their wealth, rather than what is actually good for the people as a whole. So we say democracy, but de facto it doesn't feel like a democracy to me. And so I think that in that situation, you definitely have a very strong role for independent voices who are not tethered to the political system and not tethered to a particular brand of fact-finding or research, who just have decided, okay, I'd like to study this, and ideally a very diverse team, a team which has, and in fact this is the team I'm working on right now with my current project, Secession by WA, which is got a lawyer and a health practitioner and myself, an economist, and another economist, and we're all taking a different perspective on this research project, which is, would it be feasible and would it be good for Western Australia to secede from the Commonwealth? How could we set the society up such that it would be better for people here in WA than what we have at the moment? And I think there's a role for us because we have no political connections. I'm very apolitical. I like to say I take policy from whichever side of politics gives the best policy option. I don't care whether it's left, right, center, or otherwise. I'm not an ideologue. I'm a practical person. So I tend to find these days that the arguments that are put forth by the right side of the spectrum tend to be more commonsensical, but that maybe wasn't always true. Could have been that 50 years ago it would have been the left side that was coming up with the more commonsensical policies. I haven't studied that in depth, but I don't really care. So I'm really very much not oriented towards politics. I'm very much oriented towards just independent discovery of the best ways to do things for people. And so, yes, I think there's a role for that because in a society where a lot of the institutions have been captured in various ways by special interests, you need a voice for the people as a whole that is not tethered to those special interests, that is using diverse means of researching what might be best for us, and that can then have an avenue to get that information out, which of course is independent podcasts and Substacks and all these other kinds of independent media that have sprung up, particularly since the COVID era, but even before then, and potentially mainstream media. I mean, sometimes I get covered in the mainstream media, that's great, but I would trust a team like that myself if I was evaluating some other area of policy more than I would an internal team within a political system these days, because of the degree of corruption that I know has infiltrated, has basically arisen in a lot of our Western institutions.